The media coverage of climate change is leaving audiences feeling frustrated and hopeless. The abundance of information available often leaves people confused and unsure what to believe, leading to a sense of overwhelm. Swati Sanyal Taraftar, a journalist, mentor, and solutions journalism trainer, is our guest speaker. Swati says she often hears the same questions about solutions reporting, no matter who is studying or discussing it. She recently wrote answers to 7 of the most common questions she hears to help people like you on their solutions journalism journey. Welcome, Swati.
Thank you so much, Hugo, for having me here.
A pleasure. Swati, you're a journalist, a mentor, a solutions journalism trainer, and as such, you often hear many of the same questions about solutions reporting, no matter who's studying and discussing it. You recently wrote out answers to 7 of the most common questions you hear in order to help people like our students participating in this training on their solutions journalism journey. I have shared with our students 7 ways to stay smart on your solutions journalism journey, tips gathered on the path from student to trainer and mentor. Tell us about 3 of those inquiries.
I have to mention one thing that a lot of journalists, when they come to solutions journalism, they assume that they already know what solutions journalism is. And that is a pain. And that is actually very sad. And I mention that to everyone because the name is such a giveaway, right? We understand what solutions is, and so we understand what solutions journalism is. But it's wrong. Because solutions journalism goes much deeper. It's an investigative technique, and you have to give it time. There are 4 pillars that we have to cover that you might already have shared in the modules. And that makes it not so easy for journalists to right away start working on a solutions journalism story. And there are stumbling blocks. So the first point I should start with, which I draw from the Substack post that I just mentioned, is that you be very clear what it is. Let us understand what the framework requires. And that helps a lot in clarifying what exactly we are looking for, what kind of stories can we cover as a part of our climate solutions journalism projects. So that is immensely useful. Because I have seen while working with newsrooms, mostly in Europe, people come with a certain set idea that, okay, these are the stories I'm going to cover in, say, during the grant period of 6 months or 1 year. And they have to completely change the topics, the title for the stories, because they have faced something new. Because solutions journalism is not just the solutions. We have to go deeper into if it is working or not, the evidence limitations. And when it comes to climate solutions, we get a few more dynamics to work with. So that said, the 3 areas that I should talk about in a module like this is definitely understanding the limitations and insights and how are they different. And this is something everybody, all of us have trouble beginning with. Like how is limitations different than insights? And Jennifer Rosen of the Solutions Journalism Network explained to us very clearly is that limitations are the challenges of the solution. Those are the points or the situations when why the solution is not 100% perfect or 100% efficient, but insights tell us why this solution is working in this particular context. And this is a very nuanced difference probably because context, as in any other journalism project, becomes very important, a key player here. So if you change the context, the performance of the solution might change. And that is what we are trying to reflect here. Because when we are covering a solutions journalism story or any kind of solutions reportage, the idea is, or I suggest it to my students, the idea should be, after reading your story, somebody else who has the same kind of problem would be willing to try this particular solution in their area and that area or that context might be across the globe. So you have to give the complete information about the solution, what it is, how it works, what are the stumbling blocks, why it doesn't work, under what context it will work or not work, etc., which are all nicely covered in the 4 pillars that we have of solutions journalism. So that's my first point. The second is when it comes particularly to the climate solutions reporting. What we keep seeing all the time is that many of the stories or many of the solutions suggested are not 100% effective. It will not be 100% effective, but it is not even 70% effective. It is not even 50% effective. And as we know, that in solutions journalism, we can cover solutions that are not working. And we have the 4 pillars to highlight the fact that why it is not working. So we capture the limitations, we capture the evidence to show that this is not working, or the insights that we can gain from it. That same solution can probably work in a different context, as I was just talking about. If you take that solution from that particular context and take it to another region, another location around the globe, it might just work. So it is important to cover solutions that are failing as well and to analyze why they're failing. And this becomes all the more important in climate solutions because going forward, I'll talk about a couple of examples where you can see that NGOs, government departments, international organizations are promoting a certain kind of solution that might help. But when you apply solutions journalism on that, you see that the evidence is not that great, the limitations are quite much, and you have a lot of insight to take away. And that proves that the solution might not be that great. And it also kind of is a very strong information that goes towards this sponsoring organizations or the action-taking organizations that they have to make some tweaks. This becomes all the more important for climate solutions reporting because we don't have time. There's a bit of urgency when we are talking about climate coverage or any kind of solutions regarding that. The third thing which I want to mention, Hugo, is very important. And this is something that is kind of a little customization, a little different from the rest of solutions journalism in other beats. Because where we say that you should be doing solutions journalism on a solution that has been in practice for some time, for climate solutions reporting, you do not have that time all the time. So often it happens, for example, you're trying to talk about deep sea mining or green hydrogen. Or, for example, like we have stories to set up examples on these topics or anything, for example, lab meat. So how do you know that these solutions will work or not? We cannot wait for 20 years or 15 years to wait and see how the how the solution worked. The investments would have already happened. The processes would have already changed. And those will be irreversible. And as I said, when it comes to climate, we don't have time. It's a very urgent situation that we have now. So this is important that we tweak a little bit of that clause that we have for solutions journalism, that we don't wait so long for the data to come in, but we use ways to find evidence from other sources, for example, researchers in controlled environment or results from other parallel, similar, simultaneous works. And I'll give example when we talk about this later.
Yes.
So these are the most important, I feel.
No, and thank you. I think like you've mentioned before, a lot of times people get confused with the word solutions of solutions journalism. But then when you start to talk about the 4 pillars, and as you've mentioned, including limitations, there's a lot to learn from things that are not working, just as much as there's a lot to learn from things that are working. And as you've said, there might be a problem, a social problem, where you are residing and locally you're doing the story, but that same problem might exist somewhere else. And so it's very important to figuratively and physically get up from your desk and look around and see who else is responding to this social problem and what you can learn from it. Again, the 7 questions, most popular questions that you face, we will be sharing with our students, and they can read your article, as well as the 3 that you've highlighted. I now want to talk about applying solutions journalism to climate coverage, more in detail. Audiences are seeking clear, credible, and actionable information on climate change. By focusing on solutions journalism in media coverage, individuals can feel empowered to take action in their own lives. Providing practical tips in every story can guide individuals on ways to make a difference, whether through personal actions or by advocating for change from policymakers and community leaders. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts in that regard.
This is such a fantastic question, Hugo, and I can go on and on this, so feel free to stop me whenever you want to. 2 things I must highlight before we get into this topic. First is solutions journalism is not giving us, the audience, a prescription of what you can do. So we are just showcasing that some people are doing this to tackle this problem. But we are not advocating people, advising them to pick up that solution. So that will come as a part of, what we call inspired action for the people. Because when you see that I'm aghast with the amount of plastic around me, and what do I do about it? Or I'm perturbed by the amount of textile waste in my home. And what can I do about it? Because I am learning that these are also wastes. And when they go out into the landfill, they cause warming. And these are not good for anybody. And we can, as solutions journalists, highlight what people are doing about it. But it should come from the audience themselves that if I can work on this, if I can borrow this advice or this solution and work on it, that is not our intention, or that is not from where we are coming at all. So that has a different kind of voice to the journalism that does that. We are not getting there. And people assume that any kind of solution is good solution. So that is why it is important to question the solution, evaluate it in terms of evidence, limitation, and insights. That said, when it comes to the audience being able to pick up clear, actionable steps. Again, the report, the solutions journalism report that comes to the audience should be able to inform him as much about what is needed to be done and where, under which context those solutions work. It is up to the audience after that to find out whether that solution will work in his or her context, in their context, or how. So that is one place I think solutions journalists don't usually go. It might not be okay or very useful to go, because contexts change heavily when we are moving across a demographic, we are moving across a region. That said, again, we have to, climate solutions now is everywhere. Climate coverage can come from everywhere. We earlier, maybe 10 years ago, people would have thought that climate coverage or climate writing or climate science is a very specialized beat and it is for somebody else, not for me. But now if you look at education coverage, if you look at technology, if you look at business, if you look at fashion, everywhere you can find a climate connection, and every reporter can do a climate story related to the beat. To support this point, I can say I can actually mention the climate coverage now. This climate coverage now awards that just happened. The winners have been announced this month. If you look at the list there, and you would see, I mean, I was shocked to see people, journalists covering climate from the point of music industry. That is one of the top three shortlisted stories. I think it's in Climate in Every Beat. That was I was judging that thing along with a few others. So who would have thought that the music that we listen is also causing a high drama when it comes to climate emissions? I mean, we intuitively knew, but nobody pointed that to us earlier. And these are the kind of stories that we need to see more. These would create that kind of engagement and information among the audience to be aware of it. But this was not a solution story. A solution story would be what people are doing to combat this. And this is where I would like to point out, Hugo, that we have to be mindful of the fact that solution story doesn't work everywhere. We have to have a certain kind of public awareness about a topic in order to be talking about the solutions. So now when we understand that the music industry, the way it is working, the way the concerts happen, the way musicians tour, and that is causing so much trouble when it comes to climate change and global warming. Maybe now we can look at the solutions. We're ready to look at the solutions. And there are solutions. There are people, there are musicians. I'm not going to name them because I hope somebody would write about them in more detail. And they are taking steps. They are doing things to reduce the emissions, to reduce the huge amount of energy consumption that are involved in this. So when we present these information, this kind of coverages to the audience, it is up for the audience to take it up and decide what to do. Because one thing, as climate journalist, and I'm saying all of this because I understand that as a climate journalist, as a solutions journalist, I feel very excited and passionate about, pushing out a solution and saying, people, you should do this, this is such a good solution. And that is where we should bar ourselves, because we should not go overboard with excitement on the solutions, because again, the solutions will work in different contexts, in different efficiency. Mm-hmm. And we need to be mindful of that.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, as you've mentioned, again, solutions journalism can be really inform, educate, empower, and hopefully inspire people to take action, whether it's, again, they personally or looking at their elected officials and look for them to provide the policy changes that are necessary. Newsrooms are starting to broaden their climate reporting to make solutions a bigger part of the coverage. A guide published in partnership between the Solutions Journalism Network and Coverage Climate Now, they produced a really great resource for understanding how climate solutions journalism is truly beat agnostic. And I've shared with the students, coverage is broken down into 5 specific areas: politics and government, economics and business, technologies and practices, civil society, culture. You mentioned the music industry. So I think more and more what we're seeing is climate coverage isn't necessarily a specific beat, but it integrates very nicely in other areas of coverage that are staples for many of the newsrooms. I wanted to now take the opportunity there are many examples of solutions journalism and also solutions journalism in regard to climate coverage. Talk to us about some of the examples that you collected for us.
Like the music industry story that I just talked about. This is one of the top 3 entries in the Covering Climate Now Awards this year. The first entry that we all unequivocally loved comes from Philippines. It's a 2-story series where they talked about why our climate education is not enough. And once again, this is not a solution story. But why am I talking about this? When it comes to climate coverage, we have to understand now that this is not a special beat, as you just mentioned. This is everywhere. This is everything that we use, consume, experience. And we should start questioning that. The story from Philippines about climate education is a universal story. They are focusing on the Philippines education system. But if you read it in America, if you read it in India, if you read it in Sri Lanka, if you read it in UK, you will feel the same questions rising in your heart. The main point there was, are we doing enough, or are we teaching our children enough of climate science and the way we teach? Like we are asking them to do a project, and then we are expecting them to go and get some more plastic to exhibit their project. How can we change this? Now, I would like to see a solutions journalism report here from any part of the globe that says, here is a school or here is a teacher who is teaching climate science or climate education in a different way, using clay, mud, sustainable products where people do not have to create more plastic to conform to that education policy. Are these stories not there? They are. As solutions journalists, we need to have our mindset and the effort to find them out and report on them. So while it is important to question something and raise, basically talk about stuff that is happening around us that nobody is talking about. For example, with this Philippines story, it was important for somebody to write it because we all know it. This is happening. The way climate education is happening is not exactly the right thing. Somebody needed to say it because we have this on record now. We have it in our awareness, and now we go looking for the solutions. Now we go looking for ways in which people are or teachers are educating children in climate science and important information.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think it is really important to take a look at the education of climate in schools and shift from the way things are being taught, because too often they're not reflective of some of the practices that are being advocated in regards to solving for climate change. So a really good example of that story in the Philippines. What other examples do you have for us?
Yes. So, as I mentioned in the first question, Hugo, when you asked that the 3 points that I should talk about when it comes to climate coverage, I was talking about how climate solutions reporting can tweak certain clauses that are there in the solutions reporting or the solutions journalism framework. And one of that is when you look at deep sea mining or even green hydrogen. So I will go into the links that I had shared, or I'll provide more if you want. Unbiased the News, who I worked with last year, mentoring them on their solutions journalism journey. So they try to apply the 4-pillar framework in some of their stories. And then they came up asking if they can evaluate and investigate one topic, not just a story. And one topic, why is that becoming so important? Because this is something that we don't have enough evidence that it might work. It again starts getting into that cycle of, countries that do not have as much negotiating power or as much money will be used, their environment will be degraded, and we will, the developing countries will gain from it. So a question they constantly asked is solutions for whom? And that is something that should come out, jumping out in the climate solutions journalism that we do at all times. Because we cannot just think that resilience is something God gifted. Resilience is something we are building when it comes to climate issues, because we don't have any other option. So this is the, climate solutions journalism is not just one focal area. This is a whole system, and we have to talk about it. So when we talk about this deep sea mining, this newsroom, Unbiased News, they have done multiple stories on the topic. And if you go into their website or the Chain Reactions series, you will see there are multiple stories on deep sea mining, because they figured that I cannot contain all the four pillars in one story of 1,200 words. There is so much to it. So let us do response in one, describe what it is and what we have so far, then talk about evidence in another story, another piece, and then talk about the limitations or what might go wrong or where we stand in terms of the technology that we have now in another piece. And they're still, I think they have done more than 7 stories on deep sea mining, all very well reported long form articles. So what I'm trying to say that this might not fit into your regular 1,200 word solutions journalism piece, but the mindset of solutions journalism would lead you to ask the right questions and do the right kind of coverage that will help our audience and also us as journalists to stay informed on the proposed solutions. And this is also becoming all the more important because the solutions that are being proposed to us, like instead of fossil fuel, what? Green hydrogen? For whom is the solution? Where will it work? This context is getting so important. So if you go into the Unbiased News portal again, their story collections, they have done a series on that as well. So the green hydrogen is being manufactured in African countries, and those are supposedly to be used in European countries. So the newsroom, who is in Amsterdam, and they were working with another German newsroom, Perspective Daily. So they tried to figure out like how it is the production of green hydrogen in Nigeria or Namibia is impacting those regions. Of course, the story, green hydrogen in Europe, will be a different story than green hydrogen in Namibia or Nigeria. And as solutions journalists, we need to cover both angles.
I want to ask you, there's
yes.
something that you've heard up a couple of times. Who is the solution journalism story for? And then you also mentioned in an example about changing the way climate change is being taught as well, and suggesting a solution story around that. More often than not, the people who are being affected by climate change are the most vulnerable. And in this country, in the United States, we're usually talking about people of color, people that are don't have the same economic means of others. So they are living in neighborhoods that are environmentally compromised, whether it's living near a highway or factories. And you've mentioned also the Philippines and the African continent and others. How important, from the journalism perspective, in telling these solutions journalism stories on climate coverage? Because I often come across the intent and the impact are often polar opposites. The intent, more often than not, is a good one, but the impact ends up being the opposite. How important is it to not be exploitative of these vulnerable people when telling the solutions journalism story on climate coverage? How important is it for the journalist not to cause any harm or more harm?
This, in fact, this is something that completely underlines the intent of climate solutions journalism, Hugo. And why so? When I ask this question that who is this solutions for example, who is this green hydrogen as a solution? It didn't seem that this is a solution from Namibia or Nigeria from the reports that have been published on Unbiased News. But some group is proposing that this is a solution. Vulnerable people will be vulnerable. It's very unfortunate, but this is how the society works. And we see this in all the COP that happens, all the environment related, climate change related meetings that happens. After all, it all depends on how you negotiate, what resources you have, and how much power you have. So leaving that politics out of the mix for the moment, the point is, as solutions journalists, we have to weigh in when somebody is giving us this solution. How can we evaluate if this is actually a solution? And that is where I would bring about the example for the green hydrogen or deep sea mining. So we need deep sea mining because we need lithium for the batteries, for electrical vehicles, for people who have to consume a certain amount of energy. And there's always people who do not have smartphones and who do not have need for, because they do not have smartphones, they do not have the need for that kind of energy. So I'm, as a solutions journalist or as a journalist, I cannot do anything about these two groups of people, but I can talk about them. I can report on their situation, trying to be as objective as I can. And solutions journalism only helps me to stay objective in this regard. And so when I say for whom this solution works, I have to give both sides of the story in order for people, for our audiences to stay informed on what is happening and how it is supposed to happen or how it is designed to work. Yeah. So,
yeah. So I wanted, you've been very generous with your time, and I wanted to, before I let you go, we've covered so much, and you're someone that's very multifaceted, from being a journalist, being an educator, being a solutions journalism trainer and mentor. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you that I might have missed that you would like to add as we part?
Yes. So, Hugo, this is a subject for a whole day or maybe a whole week. I would finish by saying that wherever you are, in whichever beat you work, and this is mostly for editors, to have the courage and to have the kind of lookout for how your audience and how you as an individual are being affected by the warming climate or the cold climate or floods or hurricanes, all the manifestations of climate change, and go looking out from there. So I'll go back to the Covering Climate Now awards again. So if somebody looks at the list of winners, I won't even get into the entries, the list of winners, you will see such a huge range of stories that have come up, time and again there. And we were not expecting this to be. You were talking about examples. I just remembered one story from Japan that talked about cherry blossoms and how this cherry blossom season is shifting and how that is affecting a whole economy. So this might seem like a very small thing, but it's important when it comes to climate reportage. And when we have climate reportage, let us go and also look for the solutions that people are working on. I'll I'll probably, just as we finish, I'll try to talk about two things. We are not yet talking about climate change and gender so much. I mean, there's been some coverage, but we need to talk more about it. So one of my students were asking me last week that, we talk about people when they're going out in the streets and they're working in the warming climate and they're falling sick, that what is happening to the women who are at home and doing housework. So there is no data about it. There is no coverage about it. But this is also important because we have now clusters of buildings coming up in our cities. We are living in heat zones. We don't have trees much, especially in the developing or global south. And how are people tackling this? This needs to be talked. Only when we start talking about this can we then go into the solutions, like how are people managing, how are people coping. So this is an endless talk, Hugo. I'll just finish here by saying that you can find a climate story in every part of your life, and if there is a problem, there is a solution. Let us focus on that.
Swati, again, it's a pleasure to speak to you again. And every time that I speak to you, I leave with a wealth of knowledge, more so than when I came into the conversation. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights.
That's very generous of you, Hugo. And thank you so much. I can go on and on, and thank you for having me here once more.